You're Julius Caesar, dictator, lover, fashionably stabbed. But let's rewind just a touch. It's mid-March, and Rome is too loud for anyone to think clearly. Somewhere between the fishmonger yelling about spoiled sturgeon and a legionary drunkenly relieving himself against a temple column, a hooded old man leans in and whispers in your ear. "Beware the Ides of March," he says, all drama and garlic breath. You smirk. You're wearing your best toga, freshly pressed, not a single grape stain in sight. You've just left the Senate House, where a few men tried to look you in the eye while plotting where exactly in your spleen they'll stick their knives. But you're headed to a party. You're always headed to a party. You don't have time for cryptic nonsense whispered by men who smell like mildew and regret. You wave the soothsayer off with all the grace of a man who thinks God's personally signed his birth certificate. But something about his words crawls under your skin. Just a bit. You're not the sort of man who believes in omens. Well, except the ones that flatter you. A comet, a sign, a bleeding pig, kitchen accident, 17 vultures circling your villa. Coincidence? Probably. Today, though, the air feels wrong. The crowd isn't jeering like it normally does. The forum's pigeons have flown off early. Even your favorite sycophant forgot to compliment your sandals. That's when you hear it again. Ides of March. Everyone's muttering it like it's on sale. You shake off the dread. You're Julius Caesar. You've survived Sulla's purges, pirate kidnappings, civil war, and the Senate's fashion critiques. If the gods had wanted you dead, they would have scheduled it years ago. Still, just to be safe, you clutch your cloak a little tighter. You pass the statue of Pompey, the man you once called friend, then enemy, then trophy. He stares back in stone silence, as if knowing what you don't, that this is not a day for arrogance, not a day to ignore whispers, but of course you do because you're Caesar. And if someone is going to murder you, they'll at least do it with clean hands and polished daggers. Besides, it's just the Senate. What could possibly go wrong? You're 13 years old and deeply unimpressed. Your father, a middling senator with a decent name and very little spine, has just died. Rome gives you a polite shrug and moves on. No statues, no eulogies. Barely a nod from the forum. The only thing your father really leaves you is his family name, Julius. Noble enough to get you invited. Not noble enough to make you safe. You wear the toga of a boy, which is to say, a toga with a purple stripe and absolutely no power. You shuffle through ceremonies like a glorified curtain. But you pay attention. Even now, especially now. Sulla, Rome's newest dictator, is busy turning the Republic into a blood-soaked checklist. Names scrawled onto prescription boards, fortune seized, friends vanished, enemies very publicly dismembered. It's a fun time to be politically inconvenient. And guess what? You're married to one of Sulla's enemies' daughters. Cornelia, young, clever, and just unlucky enough to make you a threat by association. Sulla wants you to divorce her. You say no. Not because you're romantic, you're not. But because telling a dictator to go to hell is excellent brand building. You lose your inheritance, your priesthood, your safety. But you keep your dignity and a target on your back. So, you run, like a noble roach in a city full of sandals. You dodge assassins by inches, hide in backwater towns where your name only matters when they're collecting taxes, and lose more weight than any nobleman should. Rome keeps chewing on itself. You're just clever enough not to get swallowed. Eventually, Sulla dies. As all bad things do. You return to Rome, still skinny, still ambitious, still married. The Senate pretends not to remember. Rome has a short memory, provided you throw good parties and don't owe anyone money. You start rising, quietly at first. You charm the right matrons. You write poetry so flowery it wilts itself. You prosecute corrupt officials, badly. But the people like your voice, they like your posture, they like your nose. And you like applause more than oxygen. You learn quickly that survival is its own kind of office, that rebellion, if done with flair, becomes loyalty in hindsight, and that even the poorest boy in a purple-edged toga can become a god if he learns when to bow and when to unsheathe the knife. By the time you're 20, the Senate starts whispering your name. Not fondly, not fearfully, just curiously. That, in Rome, is the beginning of power. You've learned that politics is just war in better sandals. So you decide to try the real thing. The East is calling Pontus, Cilicia, and a particularly charming band of pirates who think kidnapping you is a brilliant idea. Spoiler, it isn't. They snatch you near the island of Pharmacusa. You're outraged, not because you're in chains, but because they ask for only 20 talents of silver. You demand they raise it to 50. After all, you're Julius Caesar. You spend the next 39 days reciting poetry to your captors and threatening to crucify them between verses. They laugh. You laugh. They release you when the ransom arrives. You promptly gather a fleet, hunt them down and, true to your word, crucify the lot of them. Then, to show your softer side, you slit their throats first, a gentleman's execution. You return to Rome with a reputation, ambitious, dangerous, and blessed with absurd confidence. You lean into it. You bribe, flatter, and speechify your way into aedileship, throwing games so grand that even your creditors cheer. You bankrupt yourself with gladiators, exotic beasts, and enough bread to feed a rebellion. The people adore you. The Senate raises one collective eyebrow, but no one stops you. Not yet. The bodies pile up, some figurative, some not. You prosecute rivals, undermine superiors, and compliment all the right wives. You are everywhere. Temples, courts, bedrooms. Your charm is a weapon sharper than any blade, and Rome, ever thirsty for spectacle, drinks you in like cheap wine. Then comes Spain, a proper war. You're sent as praetor to sort out debt collectors and mountain tribes. You return with loyalty, spoils, and just enough military polish to make the old men in the Senate sweat. But that's not enough. Not for you. You want Pontifex Maximus, chief priest of Rome. The job comes with prestige, political sway, and the added bonus of never having to pay rent again. You run a campaign so dirty it leaves mud on every toga in the city. You win, naturally, and move into the sacred house like you were born in it. Which, of course, you believe you were. Your debts grow, your enemies multiply, but your smile, still perfect. You've learned something crucial. In Rome, you don't climb ladders. You climb corpses, preferably ones you've made yourself. And if you slip, well, you make sure to land on someone else. Everyone sees where you're going. No one knows how to stop you. And you're not even at the Rubicon yet. Rome is starving, but not for food. No, Rome hungers for gossip, games, and garish promises. And you, generous soul that you are, feed it all three. You're aedile now, which means you're responsible for keeping the masses entertained. You take this as a divine challenge. Most men toss the people a few gladiators and call it a day. You import panthers, hire musicians, and flood the forum for mock sea battles. You turn public office into performance art. The city sings your name, even as your creditors sharpen their knives. You owe more than a rich man's corpse can pay, but you wear your debt like it's embroidered linen. You make sure everyone knows you're broke because you chose to delight Rome. A small price, you say with a grin, for eternal gratitude. You fail to mention that gratitude isn't legal tender. The Senate scoffs, tight-lipped and toga-clad. They call you dangerous, theatrical, unserious. They're not wrong. But they forget one crucial thing. Rome doesn't love order. It loves chaos wrapped in charisma. And right now, that's you. You make allies carefully. Men like Crassus, the richest wallet in Rome, and Pompey, the golden general with biceps and baggage. You pretend to respect them. They pretend to trust you. It's all very Roman. Then there's the laws, or rather, your creative reinterpretations of them. You slip bribes like winks, buy votes with wine, and turn elections into auctions. When your enemies protest, you remind them that the Republic was built on tradition, and tradition is just yesterday's corruption with better PR. Meanwhile, you never stop talking. Speeches, debates, funerals, you hijack them all. You speak in metaphors, promises, and pointed jabs. The crowd swoons, the Senate seethes. You win hearts, not because you're honest, but because you're entertaining. And frankly, they've heard worse lies for less bread. Your enemies try to drag up scandals, affairs, debts, rumors about late-night visits to other men's villas. You nod, you smile, you deny absolutely nothing. Denial is for men with shame. You bathe in reputation and let the filth slide off like scented oil. Eventually you run for consul, the top, the peak, the poisoned prize. You get it, of course. Rome votes for drama, and you are its star performer. You seal your power by forming the first triumvirate, an alliance so blatant it barely pretends to be subtle. You, Crassus, and Pompey divide the Republic like it's a wine list, and for a brief, glorious moment, you feel untouchable. The people cheer, the Senate glares, and you're already planning the next act. You stand on the banks of the Rubicon with one foot in Italy and one very illegal thought in your head. Behind you, a loyal legion that's followed you through Gaul, mud, and miracles. Ahead of you, Rome, your home, your stage, your executioner in waiting. The law says if you cross this river with an army, it's treason, death, war. A very strongly worded letter from the Senate. You stare at the water like it insulted your lineage. It's not much of a river, more of a sulky stream, but it might as well be the Styx. You could turn back, retire, write memoirs, lecture about glory to bored students. Or you could walk forward and change the course of history. You, of course, walk. The phrase you mutter, alea iacta est, the die is cast, isn't brave. It's practical. You've already lost the right to play fair. The Senate fears you, Pompey has turned on you, and your enemies have convinced themselves that you're power drunk. They're not wrong. So you gamble everything. You march. The news spreads faster than wildfire in a thatched suburb. The Senate panics, flees, wets its collective toga. Pompey, dear, burly, backstabbing Pompey, gathers an army and heads for Greece. You offer peace. He offers you nothing. War it is, then. You chase Pompey across seas and seasons. Battles erupt like bad theater. Pharsalus, Dyrrhachium, and then, finally, victory. Pompey flees to Egypt, hoping for sanctuary. Instead, he's stabbed on the beach by Egyptians hoping to impress you. They misread you. You arrive just in time to receive his severed head in a basket. You don't smile. You don't gloat. You look at it and feel nothing. Not relief, not triumph, just emptiness. The kind you only get when your best frenemy dies trying to outrun your shadow. But Caesar never mourns for long. You decide to stay in Egypt for diplomacy, obviously, which happens to look a lot like seduction. Cleopatra appears, sharp, charming, and dressed like a living deity. You're intrigued. You stay longer. Rome simmers while you float down the Nile with a queen who claims to be the reincarnation of Isis. You eventually leave, but not without leaving a few gifts behind, including a child. When you return to Rome, you're not just a general, you're a myth. You've defied the Senate, won a civil war, and romanced a goddess. You are, in short, impossible to ignore. And yet, the Rubicon never really leaves you. It's still there, in your mind, in your enemy's eyes, in the quiet pause before a knife is drawn. You crossed it once. But the real river, the dangerous one, it's still coming. You are crowned in everything but name. Oh, they don't call it a crown. That would upset the delicate Republican sensibilities. Those trembling old men who pretend Rome isn't already a monarchy in denial. No, they call you Dictator Perpetuo, Dictator for life, which sounds so much classier than king, and, more importantly, fits better on statues. You have it all now. Laurel wreaths, golden chairs, the power to declare festivals whenever you're bored. The Senate grovels when you sneeze. Your statue is placed beside the gods. You start signing letters with Caesar, if it pleases the gods, as if they're lucky to have you. Rome, predictably, has mixed feelings. The people adore you. Bread is cheap. The calendar makes sense now. You've even scheduled leap years like some sort of divine timekeeper. Gladiators, grain and grandeur. What's not to love? You host games, build libraries, and forgive enemies like it's a competitive sport. The elite, however, begin to twitch. You've expanded the Senate with your own supporters. Provincials, Gauls, the sort of men who once had to wait outside and pretend they mattered. Now they vote, now they cheer, now they tilt the balance of power. The old aristocrats smell smoke. They start mumbling about liberty and traditions, things they conveniently forgot during their own backroom empires. You don't listen. Why would you? You're too busy rewriting laws, redrawing maps, reorganizing the very soul of the Republic. Efficiency becomes your religion. Time is short, power is shorter. Your friends start shifting uncomfortably. Brutus, dear, conflicted Brutus, avoids your gaze in meetings. Cassius grits his teeth through every compliment. You keep them close anyway. It's what you do. You believe in mercy, in loyalty, in hubris polished to a high shine. Then there's the crown incident. At the Lupercalia festival, Mark Antony, always theatrical, usually drunk, offers you a diadem in front of the crowd. Twice. You refuse. Twice. The crowd cheers both times, unsure whether it was a performance or a rehearsal. You laugh it off. Everyone laughs. But the laughter feels off. Even you feel it, the moment when applause fades a second too early. When cheers sharpen into curiosity. Are you king? Do you want to be? And if not, then why does your statue wear that expression? You sit on your golden chair and try to ignore the silence behind the smiles. You trust your instincts, but your instincts are tired. You've won too much, lived too fast. You tell yourself no, Roman would ever raise a hand against you. Not after all you've done, not after everything you've given, but somewhere, deep in your marble-clad palace, something ancient stirs. Not rebellion, memory. Rome has killed kings before. The Ides of March arrives like any other morning. Cold, indifferent, dressed in a very unthreatening toga. You wake up late. Calpurnia begs you not to go. She's dreamt of blood, statues weeping, your corpse cradled in her arms. You laugh it off. You've had worse nightmares after seafood. Still, for a moment, you consider staying home. You pace. You stall. You pretend to read petitions while eyeing the light outside like it might stab you. Then your friend Decimus arrives. Loyal, charming Decimus. He tells you the Senate's waiting, that not showing up will look weak, that the omens are just that. Omens. You nod, smile, and follow him out the door like a sheep with a laurel crown. The walk is short, the dread is longer. You approach the theater of Pompey, your old rival's vanity project, now hosting Senate sessions while the Curia is being repaired. Ironic, you, Caesar, walking into your enemy's shadow to rule over men who pretend not to loathe you. Inside, the senators rise. Some smile, some sweat. You see Brutus, and for the briefest moment, you feel something almost human. Affection, nostalgia, miscalculation. You take your seat, and then the petition. Tullius Cimber steps forward, hands trembling, voice pleading. He wants his exiled brother pardoned. You refuse, firmly, politely. You rise to indicate the discussion is over. He grabs your toga. You frown. Casca strikes first, not cleanly, not fatally, just enough to make your eyes widen and your footing vanish. The next moments blur. A dozen men, once cowards, now emboldened. Daggers flash like poorly choreographed lightning. You try to push them off. You shout, you twist. Then you see him. Brutus. Not yet bleeding, not yet broken, still deciding if friendship outweighs fate. And then he moves. Steel meets skin. Your skin. You don't cry out. You simply stop resisting, not from pain, but from understanding. Et tu, brute? Not a question, a surrender. The final realization that Rome doesn't love heroes. It devours them, especially the ones who try to rewrite its script. The senators step back, panting like men who just killed a lion. You collapse beneath Pompey's statue, because history never skips irony. Outside, the crowd chants your name. Inside, your blood spreads like spilled wine across the Senate floor. No triumph, no speech. Just silence, heavy and satisfied. You die not as a tyrant, nor a king, nor a god. Just as a man who walked into a room full of friends and forgot to count their knives. Death, as it turns out, is anticlimactic. One moment, you're Julius Caesar, perpetual dictator, calendar reformer, walking headline. The next, you're a rapidly cooling pile of toga, puddling on a stone floor. Not exactly how you imagined the ending. But then again, you always had a flair for underestimating other people's egos. They don't flee right away. The senators stand over your body, blinking, breathing hard, half expecting lightning to strike them down or the crowd to burst in screaming. Nothing happens. Rome, true to form, doesn't react. Not yet. Brutus, poor Brutus, looks nauseated. Like betrayal came with indigestion. He wipes his blade with your toga. So considerate. Cassius smiles, too wide, like a man trying to convince himself he just saved the Republic and not just executed his meal ticket. They march outside, blades still sticky, and declare your death a defense of liberty. The crowd stares, blinks, then panics. Because if they can kill you, the man who gave them bread and circuses and slightly more organized months, who's safe? Your body is left where it fell, because apparently cleaning up a dictator isn't urgent. Eventually, a few loyal slaves gather your remains. There's no state funeral, no golden chariot, just hushed footsteps, drying blood, and a silence louder than any cheer. Mark Antony, of course, sees an opportunity. You always knew he was more muscle than mind, but he understood drama. At your public funeral, he waves your blood-stained toga like a victory banner. He recites your achievements. He points at the men who murdered you and dares the crowd to call it justice. Rome ignites. The so-called liberators flee, because it turns out stabbing one man doesn't fix 400 years of corruption. They expected gratitude. They got bricks through their windows and names scratched into walls with spit and fury. Antony finds your will and reads it aloud. You, in a final flex of genius or cruelty, left money and land to the people. The crowd loses its mind. The senators look like they've swallowed live bees. Suddenly, you're not dead. You're immortal. Not in body, of course. Your ashes are already cooling in the forum, but in reputation, in outrage, in myth. They thought they were killing a tyrant. What they created was a martyr. Rome doesn't mourn, it burns, and your name. It's not whispered in fear, it's shouted in fury. The city tears itself apart, trying to figure out what to do without you. Meanwhile, somewhere, Brutus sharpens his regrets. You wanted to be remembered. Mission accomplished. You are dead, but inconveniently so. Because even in death, you remain the most powerful man in Rome. Not physically, of course. Your limbs were burned to dust weeks ago. But your image, your name, your legacy, They haunt every column, every coin, every senator who wakes sweating through his sheets, whispering "et tu, brute" in his sleep. Mark Antony is the first to ride your coattails like a cheap cloak. He parades your memory through the streets, weaponizes your will, and plays your greatest hits at full volume. He tells the crowd you are generous, noble, practically divine, conveniently forgetting the moments when you ignored the Senate or snored through debates. Then comes Octavian. Ah, Octavian, your grandnephew, barely old enough to shave, but already sharp as a senator's knife. You named him heir in your will, thinking it would keep the family line tidy. Instead, it gives him an army, and ambition, and just enough ruthlessness to make you proud. He returns to Rome like a polite shadow, soft-spoken, modest, the boy next door. And then, with alarming precision, he begins cutting down your enemies like topiary. Antony underestimates him. The Senate tries to use him. Both will regret it. Civil war erupts again. You would have rolled your eyes if you still had any. But part of you smirks. Rome doesn't want peace. It wants a Caesar. And if not you, then the closest available knockoff. Temples are built in your name. Comets are declared your soul ascending to the heavens. Statues of you go up faster than they can be defaced. Even the calendar, your calendar, marches forward with your name etched into July, a whole month. Eternal, if occasionally hot and poorly air-conditioned. Brutus and Cassius, they lose in battle, in memory, in marble. Their names become footnotes. Yours becomes foundation. The Republic, that fragile, noble ideal you tried so hard to reform, finally shatters. Octavian sweeps up the pieces and glues them back together into something shinier. An empire. With him, Augustus Caesar, at the top. He keeps your name, your bloodline, your gods, but not your mercy. And yet in every speech he gives, in every coin he mints, there you are, smirking in profile. A reminder that even gods can bleed, but legends never go away quietly. Rome no longer fears you, it worships you, which frankly was always the plan. So this is immortality, not the poetic kind where bards sing your name under starlight. No, yours is minted, cast in bronze, hammered into coins passed from fishmonger to senator. Every time someone buys olive oil or bribes a magistrate, your nose gets rubbed by dirty fingers. Divine, in a very practical sense. The Senate eventually votes to make you a god. Officially. They build a temple in your name. Vestal virgins burn offerings to your spirit. Your statue in the forum speaks louder in silence than most men do in debate. You are now Divus Julius. Divine Julius. Not bad for a man who once fled assassins in shabby boots. You'd think death would dim you. That time would round off your sharp edges and melt your memory into something bland. Instead, your myth calcifies. You are Rome's mirror and mask. The man who ended the Republic and made it look like progress. Octavian, now Augustus, rules with your name like a talisman. He whispers it in the Senate chamber like a ward against rebellion. His titles, Princeps, Imperator, Father of the Nation, are echoes of your ambition, repackaged with softer edges. But the blueprint? Yours. You wanted to save the Republic by bending it. He breaks it politely. Meanwhile, the people still chant your name at games. Poets write odes comparing you to Aeneas, to Romulus, to Mars himself. You are Rome's favorite ghost, always lingering, always watching, always just righteous enough to justify whatever comes next. And yet, no one remembers your laugh, or how you loved theater, or the way you chewed olives when thinking. No one remembers your regrets, your second thoughts, your silent nights pacing under borrowed stars. You're no longer a man. You are marble, currency, law, the boy in the purple-edged toga, the man who crossed the Rubicon, the friend who looked Brutus in the eyes and didn't run, all buried beneath titles and temples. Still, perhaps this is fitting. Rome doesn't reward modest men. It elevates the ambitious, the clever, the brutal, and then names months after them. You wanted to be remembered. You are. But you also wanted to be understood. Tough luck. In the centuries to come, emperors will use your name like a cheat code. Caesars will rise, fall, rage, rot. Your name will cross continents, languages, ages. It will be whispered by emperors, muttered by martyrs, screamed in parliaments, and eventually mispronounced by school children. But it will endure. Because Rome may crumble, but you've already been cast in bronze. And so you vanish, not in fire, not in silence, but in repetition. Your name becomes more than syllables. It becomes structure. It becomes system. It becomes the answer to 1,000 questions Rome never dared to ask while you still breathed. What is power? Caesar. What is betrayal? Caesar. What is legacy? Excess, ambition, glory, failure? Caesar. You are not resting. You are circulating on lips, in letters, pressed into coins lost beneath ancient floorboards. Your gaze stares out from statues long after your bones forget the warmth of sunlight. You haunt the calendar. You live in the pauses between crowns and coups. Even emperors who surpass your empire kneel before your idea. And yet, what of the man? The boy whose father died in obscurity? The teenager who refused Sulla's demand? The general who wept before a statue of Alexander, ashamed he'd done so little by 30. That version of you, uncrowned, uncarved, is the one that whispers through time. Not because he conquered, but because he believed he could. History rarely remembers kindness. It forgets laughter, ignores patience, skips straight to the blade. But somewhere, between the triumphs and the tomb, you loved, you lost, you hesitated. You made choices not out of destiny, but out of desperation. It just so happened the world mistook your desperation for divinity. Rome will fall, of course. It always does. Empires crack like old marble. But your name will float, buoyed by centuries of envy and echo. You will be a warning, a legend, a caution, a template. And perhaps, in some forgotten archive or dim classroom, someone will whisper your story, not the sanitized one, not the golden mask, but this one, the one with blood and wit and sand in your sandals. Julius Caesar. Man, myth, memory, not because you were perfect, but because you never pretended to be anything less than hungry. And Rome remembers the hungry.